Chosen one. There's something happening right now in the spiritual realm that concerns you directly, and the reverberations are already rippling through the physical world in ways that will leave your enemies speechless and your destiny unstoppable. The energy surrounding this revelation carries the weight of absolute finality. There's no appeal, no negotiation, no mercy for those who dared to reach into the sacred vault of your divine inheritance. They gambled with forces they couldn't comprehend, and now the house always wins, except you are the house, and the divine is your ultimate backing. Deep within your family lineage or extended circle, there exists an energy that made a catastrophic miscalculation. This person watched you from a distance and convinced themselves they could harvest what makes you extraordinary. They studied your patterns, observed your struggles, and mistook your trials for weakness rather than recognizing them as the very crucible that forged your spiritual steel. This individual invested everything into a scheme to overpower and diminish you. They believed your gifts were transferable, that your connection to the divine could be hijacked through manipulation, spiritual interference, or sheer force of will. The most chilling aspect of this situation isn't their audacity, it's their desperation. This person has descended into a psychological spiral that borders on complete mental dissolution. They're experiencing something that transcends ordinary emotional disturbance and ventures into the territory of spiritual psychosis. The irony cuts like a blade through their consciousness, because the very mental anguish they're enduring now is precisely what they attempted to inflict upon you through their calculated cruelty. When someone reaches into the divine treasury to steal what belongs to another, they don't receive the treasure, they inherit the trials that created the treasure. Every sleepless night you suffered while building your resilience, every moment of doubt you conquered while strengthening your faith, all of it is now being experienced by the one who sought to bypass the process and claim the prize without paying the price. This person believed they were stealing gold, but gold only becomes precious after being subjected to extreme heat and pressure. They wanted your crown but refused your cross. They coveted your authority but rejected your servitude. Now the divine is showing them what inhabiting your frequency actually requires, and the revelation is destroying them from within. Your spiritual training began when you were barely old enough to understand why the world seemed so harsh. While other children played in blissful ignorance, you were being forged in fires that would have reduced lesser souls to ash. Every playground rejection, every family gathering where you felt invisible was actually preparation for wielding power that transcends human comprehension. The darkness that others feared in your story wasn't your enemy, it was your greatest teacher. Where they saw limitation, you were developing limitless strength. The very territories they tried to send you to as punishment became the kingdoms where you learned to rule with wisdom born from tribulation. This is why their current strategy of sending messengers and peacemakers reveals their complete misunderstanding of the situation. They're treating this like a human conflict that can be resolved through negotiation, apology, or spiritual manipulation. They don't realize they're facing the consequences of attempting to rob the treasury of the Most High. The frequency you operate on isn't something that can be learned, copied, or stolen. It's transmitted directly from source consciousness to those whose hearts have been purified through specific trials. The person who tried to circumvent this process is like someone attempting to perform surgery after watching medical shows on television. They have the arrogance but lack the training, and the results are predictably catastrophic. What they managed to siphon from you wasn't your actual power, it was the residual energy of your transformation process. Think of a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. What your enemy accessed was the dissolved caterpillar, not the butterfly. They're now carrying the weight of your metamorphosis without possessing the wings that justify the struggle. This is why authentic spiritual communities teach that nothing can truly be taken from someone connected to divine source. The connection isn't external, it's internal. It's not worn like jewelry that can be removed. It's integrated into your spiritual DNA. When someone attempts to steal what they cannot comprehend, they end up absorbing the byproducts of your growth rather than the growth itself. The person orchestrating against you operates from a frequency so low they cannot accurately perceive what they're dealing with. To them, you appear as someone who has everything they want: recognition, influence, favor, power. They see the crown but miss the scars. Their perception is so distorted by envy that they've convinced themselves your gifts are undeserved luxuries rather than hard-won treasures. Their intention was never to understand or appreciate your journey. It was to shortcut their own. They wanted to appear powerful without becoming powerful, to seem wise without gaining wisdom, to look blessed without being blessed. The universe is now revealing the futility of their approach through direct experience. Every burden they tried to place on your shoulders is being redistributed to theirs with compound interest. Every limitation they attempted to impose on your destiny is now constraining their own possibilities. This isn't vindictive punishment, it's educational correction. The divine doesn't operate from spite, it operates from perfect justice. When someone tries to disrupt the natural order by stealing what belongs to another, the universe restores balance by ensuring they experience the complete curriculum they attempted to skip. It's a masterclass in cosmic consequences, and graduation requires surviving what you already survived. The most dangerous aspect of their current predicament is their refusal to accept reality. They keep believing they can reverse the situation through more spiritual manipulation, more elaborate schemes, more desperate measures. They don't understand that they've triggered a process that operates beyond human intervention. Meanwhile, something extraordinary is stirring in your own energy field. All the power they thought they were draining from you is returning magnified. The gifts that seem to develop slowly are about to manifest rapidly. The dreams that felt distant are about to become immediate realities. The influence you've been preparing for is about to be released into the world with supernatural backing. This is where the story takes a turn that your enemy never anticipated. They assumed you would remain in the defensive position forever, constantly guarding against their attacks and trying to recover from their sabotage. What they failed to calculate is that every attack they launched was actually strengthening your spiritual musculature. Now you're about to flip from defense to offense, but not in the way they understand warfare. Your offensive strategy doesn't involve attacking them. It involves becoming so undeniably powerful that their attacks become irrelevant. The community they belong to is beginning to fracture under the weight of their deception. People who supported their campaign against you are starting to question what they signed up for. The energy that once seemed unified in opposition to your success is now turning inward, creating the kind of internal conflict that destroys organizations from within. They're experiencing what happens when a house divided against itself attempts to stand against someone whose foundation is built on solid rock. A particular individual within their circle has become the focal point of this disintegration. This person's pride and arrogance created the entire situation, and now their own allies are beginning to recognize them as a liability. They believe their resources could purchase victory, their connections could guarantee outcomes, and their influence could override divine decree. They're about to discover that some battles cannot be won with earthly weapons because they're being fought in heavenly courts. The spiritual principle they violated goes beyond simple energy manipulation. They attempted to counterfeit divine currency. They wanted to present stolen gifts as authentic offerings, borrowed power as personal authority, and hijacked influence as earned leadership. The universe maintains strict quality control in these matters, and counterfeit spiritual currency is always detected and rejected. Their spell work, if we can even call it that, was doomed from the beginning because it was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how divine gifts operate. They approached sacred power with profane methods, attempted to manipulate what can only be received, and tried to control what can only be surrendered to. Every incantation they performed, every ritual they conducted, every manipulation they attempted was being monitored by forces that exist far beyond their comprehension. The person they recruited to help them penetrate your spiritual defenses was never actually their ally. They were an agent of your protection operating undercover. What your enemies thought was successful infiltration was actually divine intelligence gathering information about their plans. The very person they trusted to breach your barriers was redirecting their attacks back to their source with surgical precision. This reveals something profound about divine protection. You're not just guarded by invisible forces, you're surrounded by visible ones disguised as regular people. Some of your greatest protectors are people your enemies consider neutral or even sympathetic to their cause. They created elaborate plans based on outdated information about your spiritual capacity. They're still operating under the illusion that you're the same person who could be intimidated, manipulated, or overwhelmed. What they interpreted as successful damage to your psyche was actually successful strengthening of your spiritual infrastructure. Every assault they launched required you to develop new levels of resilience, wisdom, and power. You're not the same person they started fighting, and their weapons are no longer calibrated for who you've become. The cloak of protection that has surrounded you throughout this ordeal is now becoming visible to everyone involved. People who couldn't see your spiritual covering before are beginning to recognize that something beyond human capability has been shielding you. Simultaneously, the cloak of deception that has hidden your enemy's true nature is dissolving. People who were impressed by their apparent power are seeing through the illusion to recognize the insecurity and desperation underneath. This dual unveiling creates a perfect storm of revelation that transforms every relationship in your environment. People who supported your enemy because they believed the lies about you are switching sides as truth becomes undeniable. Even some who opposed you out of genuine misunderstanding are reconsidering their position as facts replace fiction. They observed your unusual resilience, your mysterious wisdom, your uncanny ability to find light in dark situations. Instead of recognizing these qualities as evidence of divine selection, they interpreted them as threats to their own significance. The isolated incidents they orchestrated throughout your youth weren't random cruelties, they were systematic attempts to damage your spiritual development. They believed they could interfere with divine programming by creating specific traumas designed to redirect your gifts towards serving their agenda. But divine programming cannot be corrupted by human interference. The trials they designed to destroy you were absorbed into your training curriculum and used to strengthen exactly what they hoped to weaken. Every manipulation became a lesson in discernment. Every betrayal became practice in forgiveness. The wrong cookie jar they accessed represents a profound cosmic principle. Divine gifts are encoded with the specific intentions and character qualities required to wield them responsibly. When someone attempts to steal power they haven't earned through character development, they receive the tests that were designed to develop that character. Their intention to use your gifts for self-worship and domination triggered automatic spiritual safeguards that redirected their theft attempt back to its source. Instead of accessing your power, they opened a portal to your pain. Rather than inheriting your gifts, they downloaded your growth process. They wanted the destination, but received the journey, and the journey is destroying them because they lack the foundation to endure it. This is why their current state resembles spiritual psychosis rather than mere emotional disturbance. They're processing experiences that were never meant for their consciousness to handle. Imagine trying to run software designed for a supercomputer on a basic calculator. The system overload is inevitable and catastrophic. They're experiencing your trials without possessing your spiritual infrastructure, your pain without your divine comfort, your tests without your supernatural grace. The community supporting them is beginning to recognize the impossibility of their situation. People who joined their cause expecting quick victory are witnessing prolonged defeat. Individuals who contributed resources expecting profitable returns are watching their investments evaporate. Allies who provided support expecting shared triumph are facing shared destruction. This creates a domino effect where everyone connected to their campaign begins questioning their own judgment and allegiances. The person who recruited others into this spiritual warfare is now being held responsible for outcomes that exceed anything they promised or prepared for. The isolation they tried to impose on you is now their own reality. Former allies distance themselves to avoid guilt by association. Previous supporters withdraw their backing to protect their own reputation. People who once feared their influence now pity their desperation. The very network they use to coordinate against you has become the audience for their humiliation. But here's where your story transforms from defense to dominance. All the energy they invested in attempting to diminish you is now being redirected toward accelerating your advancement. The resources they wasted trying to block your destiny are being multiplied and redirected toward fulfilling it ahead of schedule. Divine justice doesn't just return what was stolen, it provides compensation for every day, every hour, every moment that was lost due to spiritual theft. The delays they caused in your timeline are being eliminated through supernatural intervention that compresses years of progress into months, months into weeks, weeks into days. The dreams that seemed to require decades to manifest are suddenly moving toward reality with breathtaking speed. Opportunities that appeared impossible are becoming inevitable. Resources that seemed scarce are flowing toward you from unexpected sources. This acceleration isn't random, it's precisely calibrated to your spiritual maturity and readiness. The divine doesn't overwhelm its chosen vessels, it empowers them according to their capacity to steward what they receive. Every trial you survived, every test you passed, every temptation you resisted increased your capability to handle greater levels of power, influence, and responsibility. The person who tried to steal your gifts is about to witness their magnification beyond anything they imagined possible. They thought they were competing for limited resources, not realizing they were fighting someone whose source is unlimited. They assumed your success would diminish their opportunities, failing to understand that divine abundance operates outside the scarcity mindset that governs earthly thinking. Their worldview is built on the premise that power is finite and must be hoarded, influence is scarce and must be guarded, and favor is limited and must be competed for. Your reality operates from the understanding that divine resources multiply when shared, increase when given away, and expand when distributed freely. This fundamental difference in operating systems explains why their attacks have failed and your responses have succeeded. The mother figure energy that may be central to this situation carries particular significance because it represents a perversion of nurturing power. Someone who should have celebrated your uniqueness instead chose to suppress it. An individual positioned to foster your development decided to sabotage it. A person capable of providing protection opted to create danger. Templanderbidabauer, 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 Templanderbidabauer. When someone in a protective role becomes a source of harm, the spiritual violation registers on frequencies that demand cosmic correction. The universe takes particular notice when those entrusted with caring for the vulnerable abuse their position to serve their own insecurity and ambition. If this energy had first-hand access to your childhood, their current breakdown carries additional layers of divine irony. They witnessed the miracle of your early development and chose to interpret it as a threat rather than a treasure. They had front-row seats to divine programming in action and decided to become critics rather than supporters of the greatest show they would ever witness. Their fixation on your power reveals the depth of their spiritual poverty. While you received supernatural endowment naturally, they've struggled desperately for fragments of influence through manipulation and control. Your effortless connection to divine favor exposes their laborious attempts to manufacture what cannot be earned through human effort. This comparison has created a wound in their heart that festers with every demonstration of your continued advancement. They wanted to corrupt your pure heart by injecting it with the same darkness that consumes them. They believed they could contaminate your connection to source consciousness by overwhelming you with pain, doubt, fear, and resentment. But let's not sugarcoat it. The truth is still hidden. It's been twisted. It's been buried under censorship, algorithms, and fear. Yet your heart never stopped recognizing what's real. That's why you're still here. That's why you never tapped out. Because you felt the simulation glitch beneath your feet. You know this world is rigged, and you're done waiting for permission to rise. The obsidian inner order wasn't built for the curious, it was forged for the committed. This is for the full-time chosen, the ones who came to lead, the ones who see beyond the veil and act anyway. Inside we hold weekly Zoom calls that cut through the noise. We share hidden teachings most were never meant to hear. We train in psychic warfare, strategy, and spiritual technologies they've kept locked away for centuries. This is the toolkit for the real ones, the ungovernable, the impossible to erase. It's time to remember who you are. The link is in the description. Your real life begins inside, but divine purity cannot be permanently contaminated by human corruption. Your heart has been designed with spiritual filters that extract wisdom from pain, strength from struggle, and compassion from cruelty. The fascination they feel toward you combines admiration and resentment in toxic proportions. They're simultaneously attracted to and repelled by the very qualities they lack. Your natural charisma highlights their forced personality. Your authentic power exposes their manufactured influence. Their genuine confidence reveals their compensated insecurity. Being near you provides them with what they crave, while reminding them of what they'll never possess through their current methods. This creates an addictive cycle where they cannot stay away from your energy, even though proximity to it torments them. They need to be around you to feel alive, but being around you makes them feel inadequate. They're drawn to your light like moths to flame, and like moths, they're being destroyed by the very thing they cannot resist. The hierarchy they've worked so desperately to maintain is crumbling under the weight of your authentic emergence. Your presence proves that true authority doesn't require permission, real power doesn't need validation, and genuine favor cannot be revoked by human disapproval. Their bootlicking empire depended on everyone believing that crawling was the only way to climb. Your example demonstrates that some people are simply born to fly. The house you possess represents total spiritual ownership rather than borrowed authority. They wear boots that can be removed. You own land that cannot be taken. They carry titles that can be revoked. You bear identities that cannot be altered. They wield influence that depends on others' cooperation. You operate power that flows from divine connection. As their illusion dissolves, your reality solidifies. The plug that maintained their false narrative has been removed, and truth is flooding every space that deception once occupied. People who believe their version of events are witnessing evidence that contradicts everything they were told. Individuals who supported their cause are discovering they were manipulated into opposing divine will. This revelation creates a mass awakening that extends far beyond your personal situation. Everyone connected to this spiritual warfare is being forced to choose between continuing to support obvious deception or aligning themselves with undeniable truth. The choice they make will determine not just your future relationship with them, but their relationship with divine favor going forward. Your readiness for what comes next has been tested and confirmed through the very trials they designed to destroy you. Every attack you survived increased your capacity. Every manipulation you overcame strengthened your discernment. Every betrayal you forgave expanded your heart. Every lie you exposed sharpened your truth-telling ability. The spiritual inventory of your character has been completed, and the results qualify you for assignments that transcend anything you've imagined possible. The authority being downloaded into your life operates on frequencies that your former adversaries cannot even perceive, much less interfere with. You're graduating from the defensive phase of your training into the creative phase of your destiny. Their attempts to steal your gifts revealed the unstealable nature of authentic divine endowment. Their efforts to diminish your influence demonstrated the indestructible foundation of your spiritual authority. Their campaigns to destroy your reputation expose the unshakable nature of your divine appointment. Every attack they launched became evidence for the prosecution in the cosmic case being built against them. They demanded to understand your power. Now they're experiencing the curriculum that creates it. They insisted they could handle your burden. Now they're carrying it without your grace. They claimed they deserved your position. Now they're learning what it actually costs. This divine reversal serves multiple purposes simultaneously. It vindicates your character before everyone who witnessed their accusations. It validates your authority in the presence of those who questioned it. It demonstrates divine protection to anyone considering similar attacks. It establishes your credibility for the greater assignments approaching. Most importantly, it liberates you from the defensive posture you've maintained throughout this spiritual siege. Your energy is no longer required for protection because your enemies have been neutralized by their own actions. Your attention is no longer demanded by their attacks because they're too overwhelmed by consequences to continue offensive operations. Your peace is no longer threatened by their schemes because they're too busy surviving the results of their previous schemes. The freedom this creates in your life cannot be overstated. For perhaps the first time since this began, you can focus entirely on building rather than defending, creating rather than protecting, advancing rather than surviving. The mental space previously occupied by strategic defense can now be utilized for strategic expansion. The emotional energy once required for spiritual warfare can now be invested in spiritual construction. Your cup is indeed running over, but not with the same substance that fills ordinary vessels. You're being filled with liquid fire that transforms everything it touches. The ideas flowing through your consciousness carry creative power that manifests in the physical realm with unprecedented speed. The inspiration downloading into your spirit generates solutions that revolutionize entire industries, communities, and cultures. This is your moment of emergence from the cocoon of preparation into the flight of purpose. Everything that seemed designed to stop you was actually designed to prepare you. Every person who opposed you was unknowingly participating in your training program. Every obstacle that appeared to block your path was actually redirecting you toward a better route. The individual who orchestrated this entire campaign against you will become your most powerful testimony to divine protection and justice. Their story will serve as a warning to anyone considering similar attacks against the chosen. Their experience will demonstrate the futility of fighting against people whose battles are won in heavenly courts before they ever reach earthly battlefields. But your story transcends their defeat. It proclaims the victory that was always inevitable. You were never fighting to win. You were fighting to prove that winners cannot be defeated by losers, light cannot be extinguished by darkness, and truth cannot be suppressed by deception. The outcome was determined before the battle began, and every struggle was simply the process of revealing what was already true. The pain they tried to inflict upon you has been transformed into the power that will heal multitudes. The limitations they attempted to impose have become the leverage that will lift entire communities. The curses they whispered into the atmosphere have been converted into blessings that will span generations. Nothing they meant for evil will remain evil. Everything will be transformed into evidence of divine goodness. As this chapter of your life closes, another one opens with possibilities that dwarf anything you've experienced previously. The influence you're about to wield will make their attempted theft seem like trying to steal a drop from an ocean. The resources flowing toward you will make their hoarding appear like saving pennies while dollars rain from heaven. The authority you're inheriting will make their power plays look like children arguing over toy crowns while real royalty approaches. This is your time, chosen one. The court has ruled, the verdict is final, and the sentence is being executed with divine precision. Justice isn't just being served, it's being served with the kind of overwhelming completeness that leaves no room for appeal, no space for argument, no possibility of reversal. Step into what has always been yours, magnified by divine mathematics that turn every loss into exponential gain. The war is over, the victory is yours, and the celebration is about to begin. They wanted to be you, but they became evidence of why you cannot be replaced, replicated, or defeated. The throne was always yours. Welcome home.